Hey everyone, Renee Trask here, and I just saw this question in a Facebook group, and I figured I would make a quick video about this because this is a topic I see questions about all the time. So the question was that their child, who happens to be on the autism spectrum, is acting hungry all the time. And they also mentioned that they're a particularly fussy eater, which is very common with kids on the autism spectrum and lots of kids with sensory processing disorder, which you don't have to have autism to have a sensory processing disorder. So first, I will preface this with the fact that I'm going to be talking about some things that are radically different than the traditional advice that you've heard from the standard American diet and the food pyramid. I'll also give the disclaimer that I am not a nutritionist or a medical doctor. I am just a mom, just like you, that's looking to do what's best for their child. And I've done a ton of research in the last 10 years on this area. This is simply my opinion based on my experience over the last 10 years. And obviously, you should be having a team of professionals working with you to find the best path for your child. So that being said, I'm just going to dive into a couple of things that came to mind when I saw this mom looking for advice in this Facebook group on what's the best things to feed my child who is acting hungry all the time. So the first thing that I would do for a child that's acting hungry all the time is they're likely not getting enough protein or fat. Typically, children on the autism spectrum, they are going to crave three things. They are going to crave, these processed foods, the starchy foods, the French fries, the chicken fingers, fried foods. The other thing that they often crave is dairy. That's a really big one. Typically, like your cheese sticks, things like that, are the things that they often want. Often these kids are very addicted to these foods, especially the carbs and the sugar. It's literally their brain telling them that they need this, and their gut bacteria, especially those bad gut bacteria that are creating yeast overgrowth in the gut. They want sugar and carbs that turn into sugar. So your child is literally being told by their body they need more, they need more, they need more of these things that these bad bacteria are craving. So my number one tip overall is that you really need to cut the processed foods out 100%. Cut all the unnatural preservatives, cut all the chemicals, artificial dyes, colors, sweeteners, you name it. If it's artificial, cut it out of the diet. Eating whole, real foods. That is the most important key. There's so much that is negative in our food today that we didn't have in our ancestors, and that's causing a lot of issues. And there's really not a lot of studies or information about the negative effects that these things are having in our bodies, or the food companies are really trying to cover up how negative the impact of these things are on the body because it's all a for-profit industry. Food that is shelf stable for longer creates more profit than something that's going to spoil. So my number two tip, which actually gets covered in the first one, but I wanted to make sure that I laid it out and said it anyways, is cut artificial dyes. I know I said it in the first one. It's super, super important that, and if you're eating whole real foods, you're naturally going to cut dyes. But again, I felt it was so important that I labeled it separately as absolutely cut all the dyes out of your system. Yeah, that means, on the holidays and birthdays and things like that, you're going to have to go to natural dyes and find other ways to get the fun colored foods for your kids' birthday parties, etc. But it's worth it. I mean, these are chemical toxins. They're not doing anything beneficial in our bodies. And especially for kids on the autism spectrum and have other special needs, they do not methylate or they get rid of these toxins properly, and they do typically negatively impact their brain and even causing anxiety and depression symptoms. All of this, yes, from food dyes. So get them out of the diet. My number three tip is to cut gluten. So yes, I guess gluten could fall under a whole real food, but there is not one of us that is processing gluten properly, especially the way that our wheat has been modified and genetically modified, and the glyphosate that is being sprayed, the Roundup essentially that is being sprayed on all of our wheat, and it's all toxic. And gluten is causing gut permeability, and another word for that is causing leaky gut. So typically, if a child is reacting negatively to a lot of different foods or getting allergies to a lot of different foods, this is a sign of leaky gut, which means you have gut permeability, which is allowing the food particles into the bloodstream. Your body's then attacking these food particles because they don't belong in the bloodstream. And then you are now creating an immune response to this food, not because you necessarily had the allergy to the food, but it was where it did not belong, which was outside of the digestive tract. There's a lot of things that you can do to heal leaky gut. That's a whole nother topic. My number 4 tip is going to be to cut carbs and sugar. Sugar in its refined form as just pure white sugar, I really mean cut it 100%, like cold turkey, get rid of it, get it out of the diet. Carbs essentially turn into sugar, which also spikes your blood sugar, which is why a lot of times, especially these kids, now kids can have a little bit more, or their bodies are more forgiving and require more carbs than adults. But it still does the same thing to their blood sugar, where their blood sugar spikes and then it comes back down. And what that's doing, that's exactly why your kids, hungry often, is they're getting these, maybe carby or processed foods. You're giving them a granola bar, you're thinking this is healthy, or a food pouch, fruit applesauce pouch, then their, blood sugar goes up and then it goes back down and then they're hungry again. So my number 5 tip is focus on the proteins and the fat. These are the things that are going to be keeping your kids feeling full for longer. Healthy sources of protein, your meats, really, really getting your children eating your meats. And I know what you're probably thinking right now, Renee, my kid is a fussy eater. They are not going to eat these foods. What am I going to feed my kid if I'm cutting all of these things out? And I promise you, your child will eat if they're hungry. I'm not saying do all of this in a day, although obviously the faster you get this garbage foods out of their diet, the more impact that you're going to see, and positive benefits in their behavior. I also want to say that it'll likely get worse before it gets better. A lot of these foods that they are getting, they're addicted to, their body is addicted to, and you are going to see a withdrawal period. And it will get worse before it gets better, but I assure you that it does get better. We recently, just this weekend, we have been doing a low carb, mostly carnivore based diet for our family. Really mostly started for myself because of some health challenges that I was having, and I needed to eliminate foods from my diet to understand what was triggering the digestive issues that I was having. And so because I was cooking a majority of say carnivore-based items and cutting carbs out of my diet, naturally that carried over into the family. And what I noticed in my kids, who are currently, at the time of this video, 2.5 years old and 9 years old, we have 3 kids on the autism spectrum. We have a 23-year-old as well. He's did this as well and did notice a positive impact on his own mood and behavior with doing this diet. So just this weekend, we had some company over. We decided to splurge and we would make Belgian waffles with fresh fruit, all really, really clean ingredients that we used in all of these, all still gluten-free. And the difference in our 9-year-old's behavior was off the charts. We're talking like from he's been up here doing really, really excellent, doing great in school, communication's fantastic, to being almost completely nonverbal at times throughout the day. Behavior's terrible, non-responsive, not responding to his name, just really, really crazy, erratic behavior that we had not seen in such a long time. And so that was proof enough for us that the carbs and the sugar really do make a difference. And I'm talking even the natural sugars in the fruit. And so hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you're interested in me covering more topics like these or diving more into depth, feel free to reach out to me, and hope you are having a fantastic day. Best wishes, everyone.